too eager. This was embarrassing. I'm sorry. There were two kinds of heat, the one curling tight at the bottom of her stomach and the one rising to her cheeks. Olive could barely tell them apart. I am perfect. He wasn't really talking to her, more to himself, marveling at the way his fingertips sank so easily between her folds, parting them and gliding back and forth until Olive threw back her head and closed her eyes because the pleasure was streaming, stretching, thrumming through her, and she couldn't. You are so beautiful. The words sounded hushed, ripped out of him, like he wasn't going to say them. May I? It took her several heartbeats to realize that he was referring to his middle finger, to the way it was circling around her entrance and tapping at it, applying a light pressure right against the rim. So what already? Olive moaned. Yes. Anything, she breathed out. He licked her nipple, a silent thank you, and pushed in. Or, at least, he tried. Olive hissed, and so did Adam, with a muted, hoarse fuck. He had big fingers. That must be why they didn't fit. The first knuckle was just shy of too much, a pinching ache and the sensation of damp, uncomfortable fullness. She shifted on her heels, trying to adjust and make room, and then shifted some more, until he had to grip her hip with his other hand to keep her still. Olive held on to his shoulders, his skin sweat slicked and scorching hot under her palms. Sho. His thumb grazed her, and she whimpered. It's okay. Relax. Impossible. Though, if Olive had to be honest, the way his finger was curving inside her, it was already getting better. Not so painful now, and maybe even wetter, and if he touched her there. Her head lolled back. She clutched his muscles with her nails. There? Is that a good spot? Olive wanted to tell him that no, it was too much, but before she could open her mouth, he did it again, until she couldn't keep quiet anymore, all groans and whimpers and wet, obscene noises. Until he tried to get a little further inside, and she couldn't help wincing. What is it? His voice was his regular voice, but a million times raspier. Does it hurt? No, oh. He looked up, all flushed pale skin against dark waves. Why are you so tense, Olive? You've done this before, right? Yes. She was not sure what compelled her to continue. Any idiot could see from a mile away that it was a terrible idea, but there was no room left for lies now that they were standing so close. So she confessed, a couple of times. In college. Adam went immobile, completely motionless. His muscles flexed, coiled strong under her palms, and then they just stayed like that, tense and still as he stared up at her. Olive. But it doesn't matter, she hastened to add, because he was already shaking his head, pulling away from her. It really didn't matter. Not to Olive, and therefore it shouldn't to Adam, either. I can figure it out. I've learned wholesale patch clamp in a couple of hours. Sex can't be much harder. And I bet you do this all the time, so you can tell me how to. You'd lose. The room was chilly. His finger was not inside her anymore, and his hand had left her hip. What? You'd lose your bet. He sighed, wiping a hand down his face. The other one, the one that had been inside her, moved down to adjust his cock. It looked enormous by now, and he winced as he touched it. Olive, I can't. Of course you can. He shook his head. I'm sorry. What? No. No, You're basically a virus. I'm not. Olive. I am not. But so close to it that. No, that's not the way it works. Virginity is not a continuous variable, it's categorical, binary, nominal, dichotomous, ordinal, potentially. I'm talking about chi-square, maybe Spearman's correlation, logistic regression, the logit model, and that stupid sigmoid function, and it had been weeks, and it still took her breath away, the uneven tilt of his smile. How unanticipated it always was, the dimples it formed. Olive was left without air as his large palm cupped the side of her face and brought it down for a slow, warm, laughing kiss. "You are such a smartass," he said against her mouth. "Maybe." She was smiling too, and kissing him back, hugging him, arms draped around his neck, and she felt a shiver of pleasure when he pulled her deeper into himself. "Olive," he said, inching back, "if for any reason sex is something that you're not comfortable with, or that you'd rather not have outside of a relationship, then—"
No.
"No, it's nothing like that. She took a deep breath, looking for a way to explain herself. "It's not that I want to not have sex. I just don't particularly want to have it. There's something weird about my brain and my body, and I don't know what's wrong with me, but I don't seem to be able to experience attraction like other people. Like normal people. I tried to just do it, to get it over with, and the guy I did it with was nice, but the truth is that I just don't feel any." She closed her eyes. This was difficult to admit. "I don't feel any sexual attraction unless I actually get to trust and like a person, which for some reason never happens. Or almost never. It hadn't, not in a long time, but now I really like you and I really trust you, and for the first time in a million years I wanna—" She couldn't ramble anymore because he was kissing her again, this time hard and bruising, as though he wanted to absorb her into himself. "I want to do this," she said, as soon as she was able to. "With you. I really do." "Me too, Olive." He sighed. "You have no idea." "Then please don't say no." She bit her lip and then his, and then nipped at his jaw. "Please?" He took a deep breath and nodded. She smiled and kissed the curve of his neck, and his hand splayed against her lower back. "But," he said, "we should probably go about this a little differently." It took her the longest time to realize his intentions. Not because she was stupid or oblivious or that naive about sex, but because maybe she was a little naive about sex. But she truly hadn't thought about it for ages before Adam, and even then, it was never quite in these terms. Him above her, pushing her legs wide open with his palms on her inner thighs and then kneeling between them. Sliding down low. "What are you?" The way he parted her with his tongue. It was as though she was butter, and he meant to slice through her like a hot knife. He was slow but sure, and didn't pause when Olive's thigh stiffened against his palm, or when she tried to squirm away. He just grunted, rich and low, then ran his nose in the skin at the juncture of her abdomen, inhaling deeply, and then he licked her once more. "Adam, stop," she pleaded, and for a moment he just nuzzled his face against her folds like he had no intention of doing any such thing. Then he lifted his head, eyes foggy, as if aware that he should be listening to her. His lips vibrated against her. Maybe you should stop?" He went still, his hand tightening around her thigh. "Have you changed your mind?"
No.
"But we should do other things." He frowned. "You don't like this?"
No.
"Yes." "Well, I've never." The line between his eyebrows deepened. "But I'm the one who put you up to this, so we should do things that you are into and not stuff for me." This time it was the flat of his tongue against her clit, pressing just enough to make her clench and exhale in a rush. The tip was circling around it, which, such a small movement, and yet it sent her hand straight to her mouth, had her biting the fleshy part of her palm. "Adam." Her voice sounded like someone else's. "Did you hear what You said to do something I'm into." His breath was hot against her. "I am." "You can't possibly want to." He squeezed her leg. "I can't remember a moment I didn't. It just didn't feel like standard hookup fare, something this intimate." But it was hard to protest when he looked spellbound, staring at her face and her legs and the rest of her body. His hand was large, open over her abdomen and holding her down, inching higher and closer to her breasts, but never close enough. Lying like this, Olive was a little embarrassed of how concave her stomach was, of the way her ribs stuck out. Adam, though, didn't seem to mind. Wouldn't you rather?
A nip. No.
I didn't even say. He glanced up. There isn't anything I'd rather do.
But.
He sucked on one of her lips with a loud, wet noise, and she gasped. And then his tongue was inside her, and she moaned, half in surprise, half at the feeling of yes.
Yes.
Fuck, someone said. It wasn't Olive, so it must have been Adam. Fuck. It felt incredible, otherworldly. His tongue, dipping in and out, circling and lapping, and his nose against her skin, and the quiet sounds he made from deep in his chest whenever she contracted, and Olive was going to she. She wasn't sure she was going to come. Not with another person in the room, touching her. This might take a while, she said apologetically, hating how thin her voice sounded. Fuck yes. His tongue swiped the entirety of her, a long, broad stroke. Please. She didn't think she'd ever heard him quite this enthusiastic about anything, not even grant writing or computational biology. It kicked the whole thing a few notches higher for her, and it got worse when she noticed his arm. The one that wasn't cupping the cheek of her ass and holding her open. He hadn't taken himself out of his pants yet, that Olive could see, and wasn't that unfair, since she was all splayed open for him. But the way his arm was shifting, how his hand was moving up and down slowly, that was just unbearable. She arched further, her spine shaping a perfect curve as the back of her head hit the pillow. Olive. He leaned back a few centimeters and kissed the inside of her shaking thigh. Took a deep breath with his nose, as if to hold the smell of her within himself. You can't come yet. His lips brushed against her folds as his tongue dipped in again, and she squeezed her eyes shut. There was a liquid, burning heat blossoming in her tummy, spilling all over her. Her fingers clawed at the sheets, grasping for an anchor. This was impossible. Unmanageable. Adam. Don't. 2 more minutes. He sucked on God. Yes.
There.
I'm sorry. 1 more. I can't. Focus, Olive. In the end, it was his voice that ruined everything. That quiet, possessive tone, the hint of an order in the low rasp of his words, and the pleasure broke over her like an ocean wave. Her mind snapped, and she was not wholly herself for seconds, and then minutes, and when she had a sense of the world again, he was still licking her, except more slowly, as if with no purpose but to savor her. I want to go down on you until you pass out. His lips were so soft against her skin. No, Olive fisted the pillow. You can't.
Why?
I have to. She couldn't think straight, not quite yet. Her mind was addled, stuttering. She almost screamed when he pushed one finger inside. This time it sank like a rock into water, smooth and without obstacle, and her walls clamped on it as if to welcome Adam and hold him inside. Jesus. He licked her clit again, and she was too sensitive for this. Maybe. You are. He hooked his finger inside her, pressing against the roof of her channel, and the pleasure welled in her, washing against her edges. So small and tight and warm. The heat flooded within her once more, knocked the air out of her lungs, leaving her open-mouthed, bright colors bursting behind her eyelids. He groaned something that was not quite coherent and slid in another finger on the tail end of her orgasm, and the taut stretch of it was ruinous. Her body bloomed into something that didn't belong to her anymore, something made of bright, high peaks and lush valleys. It left her heavy and boneless, and she was not sure how long went by before she could bear to raise her palm to his forehead and gently push him away to get him to stop. He shot her a sullen glance but complied, and Olive tugged him up, because he looked like he might start again any moment, and because it would be nice to have him next to her. Maybe he was thinking the same. He lifted himself above her, leaning his weight on his forearm, his chest pushed against her breast, one large thigh lodged firmly between her legs. She was still wearing her stupid knee socks, and God, Adam was probably thinking that she was the lamest lay he'd ever. "Can I fuck you?" He said it, and then he kissed her, unconcerned with where his mouth had been just seconds earlier. She wondered if she should be put off by that, but she was still twitching with pleasure, contracting with aftershocks at the memory of what he'd just done. She couldn't make herself care, and it was nice to kiss him like this. So nice. Her palms came up to cup his face, and she began to trace his cheekbones with her thumbs. They were red and hot.
What?
"Can I fuck you?" He sucked the base of her throat. "Please." He breathed it against the shell of her ear, and it wasn't as though she could say no. Or wanted to. She nodded her permission and reached for his cock, but he beat her to it and pulled down his pants, closing his fist around it.
He was big.
Larger than she'd thought he'd be, than she'd thought anyone could be. She could still feel his heart pounding rapidly against her chest as he aligned himself to her and nudged the head against her opening, and Olive was lax now, and pliant, and still not loose enough.
Ah.
It didn't quite hurt, but it was nearly too much. Definitely not easy. And yet, that sensation, the push of him against every part of her, it held a promise. "You're so big." He groaned into her neck. His entire body was vibrating with tension. "You can take it." "I can," she told him, voice reedy, and her breath caught halfway through the second word. Women gave birth, after all. Except that he was not really. Not even half. And there was just no more room. Olive looked up at him. His eyes were closed, dark half-moons against his skin, and his jaw was tense. What if it's too much? Adam lowered his lips to her ear. Then, he attempted a thrust, and maybe it was too much, but the friction was lovely. "Then I'll fuck you like this." She squeezed her eyes shut when he hit a place that made her whimper. God, Olive. Her entire body was pulsating. "Is there something I should be?" He kissed her collarbone. Their breathing was erratic by now, loud in the silence of the room. "Be quiet for a moment. So I don't come already." Olive canted her hips, and he was rubbing that spot again. It made her thighs tremble, and she tried to open them wider, to invite him inside. "Maybe you should." "I should." She nodded. They were too dazed to kiss with any kind of coordination by this point, but his lips were hot and soft when they brushed against hers. "Yes. Inside you. If you." Adam's hand came up behind Olive's knee and angled it just so, spreading her legs in a way she simply hadn't thought of. Firmly holding her open. "If you want to." "You're so perfect, you're driving me insane." Her insides opened to him without warning. They welcomed and pulled at him until he bottomed out, until he was wedged deep and stretching her to a point that should be breaking, but just made her feel filled, sealed, perfect. They both exhaled. Olive lifted a hand, closed it shakily around Adam's sweaty nape. "Hey." She smiled up at him. He smiled back just a little. "Hey." His eyes were opaque, like stained glass. He moved inside her, just a hint of a thrust, and it made her entire body clench around him until she could feel his cock twitch and pulsate inside her, like a drum. Her head fell to the pillow, and someone was groaning, something guttural and out of control. Then Adam pulled out, pushed back in, and they annihilated the no-sex rule. In the span of a few seconds, his thrusts went from tentative, exploratory, to fast and all-eclipsing. His hand slid to the small of her back, lifting her into him as he piled in, and in again, rubbing inside her, against her, forcing pleasure to vibrate up her spine. "Is this okay?" he asked against her ear, not quite managing to stop. Olive couldn't answer. Not past the sharp hitch of her breath, the way her fingers dug desperately into the sheets. Pressure built again inside her, swelled large and consuming. "You have to tell me if you don't like it," he rasped. "What I'm doing." He was eager, a little clumsy, losing control and slipping out of her, having to nudge his cock back inside. He was out of focus, but so was she, too flooded by how good he felt, how stupefying the pleasure, how smoothly he slid in and out. How right this felt. Olive, you have to. He stopped with a grunt, because she canted her hips and clenched around him, gripping him harder, sucking him deeper. "I like it." She reached up to fist her fingers in his hair, to catch his eyes, make sure he was paying attention as she said, "I love it, Adam." His control poured out. He made a crude noise and shuddered, pumping hard and muttering nonsense into her skin. How perfect she was, how beautiful, how long he'd wanted this, how he would never, could never let go of her. Olive felt his orgasm soar, the blinding, scalding pleasure as he trembled on top of her. She smiled. And when new shivers began to roll down her spine, she bit Adam's shoulder and let herself go under. Chapter 17. Hypothesis. When I think I've hit rock bottom, someone will hand me a shovel. That someone is probably Tom Benton. Olive drifted off after the first time and dreamed of many strange, nonsensical things. Sushi rolls shaped like spiders. The first snowfall in Toronto during her last year with her mother. Adam's dimples. Tom Benton's sneer as he spat the words little sob story. Adam. Again, this time serious, saying her name in his unique way. Then she felt the mattress dip and the sound of something being placed on the nightstand. She slowly blinked awake, disoriented in the dim light of the room. Adam was sitting on the side of the bed, pushing a lock of hair behind her ear. "Hi." She smiled. "Hey." Her hand reached out to touch his thigh through the pants he'd never managed to take all the way off. He was still warm, still solid, still there. "How long did I sleep?" "Not long. Maybe 30 minutes. She stretched a bit against the mattress, arms above her head, and noticed the fresh glass of water on the nightstand. "Is that for me?" He nodded, handed it to her, and she propped up on her elbow to drink it, smiling in thanks. She noticed his gaze linger on her breasts, still tender and sore from his mouth, and then drift away to his own palms.
Oh.
Maybe now that they had sex, good sex, Olive thought, amazing sex, though who knew about Adam? He needed his own space. Maybe he wanted his own damn pillow. She returned the empty glass and sat up. "I should move to my bed." He shook his head with an intensity that suggested that he didn't want her to go. Not anywhere, not ever. His free hand closed tight around her waist, as if to tether her to him. Olive didn't mind. "You sure? I suspect I might be a cover hog." "It's fine. I run warm." He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "And, according to someone, I look like I might snore." She gasped in mock outrage. "How dare they? Tell me who said that, and I will personally avenge you." She yelped when he held the icy cool glass against her neck, and then dissolved into laughter, drawing up her knees and trying to twist away from him. "I'm sorry, you don't snore. You sleep like a prince." "Damn right." He set the glass on the nightstand, appeased, but Olive remained curled up, cheeks flushed and breathing hard from fending him off. He was smiling. With dimples, too. The same smile he'd smiled into her neck earlier, against her skin, the one that had tickled her and made her laugh. "I'm sorry about the socks, by the way." She winced. "I know it's a controversial topic." Adam looked down at the rainbow-colored material stretched around her calves. "Socks are controversial?" "Not socks, Percy. Just keeping them on during sex. Really?
Totally.
At least according to the issue of Cosmopolitan we keep at home to swat cockroaches. He shrugged, like a man who'd only ever read the New England Journal of Medicine and maybe Truck Pushing Digest. Why would anyone care one way or the other? Maybe they don't want to unknowingly have sex with people with horrible, disfigured toes? Do you have disfigured toes? Truly grotesque.
Circus-worthy.
Antithetical to sex. Basically a built-in contraceptive. He sighed, clearly amused. He was struggling to hold on to his moody, broody, intense act, and Olive loved it. I've seen you in flip-flops multiple times. Which, by the way, are not lab compliant. You must be mistaken. Really. I don't like what you're insinuating, Dr. Carlson. I take the Stanford Environmental Health and Safety Guidelines very seriously. And what are you? He was so much larger than her. He could hold her down with one hand on her belly as he wrestled her out of her socks, and for some reason she loved every moment of it. She put up a good fight, and maybe he'd have a couple of bruises tomorrow, but when he finally managed to take them off, Olive was out of breath from laughing. Adam caressed her feet reverently, as though they were delicate and perfectly shaped instead of belonging to someone who ran 2 marathons a year.
You were right, he said.
Chest heaving, she looked at him curiously. Your feet are pretty hideous. What? She gasped and freed herself, pushing at his shoulder until he ended up on his back under her. He surely could have unseated her, giant that he was. And yet, take it back. You said it first. Take it back. My feet are cute. In a hideous way, maybe. That's not a thing. His laugh blew warm against her cheek. There's probably a German word for that. Cute, but exceptionally ugly. She bit his lip just enough to make him feel it, and Adam, he seemed to lose that grip he always had on himself. He seemed to suddenly want more, and he flipped them until she was underneath him, turning the bite into a kiss. Or maybe it was all of herself, since her tongue was licking his lip, exactly where she'd made it sting. She should probably tell him to stop. She was sweaty and sticky, and should excuse herself and go take a shower. Yes, that sounded like good sex etiquette. But he felt warm and strong, positively glowing. He smelled delicious, even after all they'd done, and she couldn't help getting sidetracked and letting her arms loop around his neck, pulling him down. You weigh a ton, she told him. He made to move up and away, but she wrapped her legs around his waist, holding him close. She felt so safe with him. Invincible. A true slayer. He turned her into a powerful, ferocious person, one that could destroy Tom Benton and pancreatic cancer before breakfast. No, I love it. Stay, please. She grinned up at him and saw his breathing speed up. You are a cover hog. There was a spot at the base of her neck that he'd found earlier, a spot that made her sigh and arch up and melt into the pillow. He attacked it like it was his new true north. He had a way of kissing her, half cautious and half unrestrained, that had her wondering why she used to think of kissing as such a boring, aimless activity. I should go clean up, she said, but didn't make a move. He slid down just a couple of inches, just enough to get distracted by her collarbone and then by the curve of her breast. Adam. He ignored her and traced her jutting hip bones and her ribs, the taut skin of her belly. He kissed every last freckle, as though to store them up in his memory, and there were so many. I'm all sticky, Adam. She squirmed a little. In response, his palm moved to her ass. To keep her still. SSH. I'll clean you up myself. He put his finger inside her and she gasped because, oh God.
Oh.
Oh God. She could hear the wet noises down there, from herself and his own cum, and he should be disgusted by this, and she should, too, and yet, she wasn't, and he was groaning, as if the satisfaction of having made a mess of her inside her, of knowing that she'd let him, was a heady thing for him. Olive closed her eyes and let herself go under, feeling him lick the skin between her thigh and abdomen, hearing low moans and gasps coming out of her own mouth, sliding her fingers in his hair to grip him more tightly against her. She was definitely clean by the time she came, slow contractions that swelled in large waves and had her thighs shaking around his head, and that was when he asked, "Can I fuck you again?" She looked up at him, flushed and hazy with her orgasm, and bit her lip.
She wanted to.
She really wanted to have him on top of her, inside her, chest pushing her into the mattress and arms snaked around her body. That feeling of security, of finally belonging that seemed to get more intense the closer he got to her. "I want to." Her hand came up to touch his arm, the one he was holding himself up on. I'm just sore and He immediately regretted asking. She could tell by how his body stilled before he got off her, as if to not crowd her, as if to give her space she didn't want. "No," she panicked. "It's not that." "Hey." He noticed how flustered she was and bent down to kiss her. "I do want to." "Olive." He curled around her. His cock rubbed against her lower back, but he instantly angled his hips away. "You're right. Let's go to sleep." "What?"
"No."
She sat up, frowning. "I don't want to go to sleep." He was struggling, she could tell, trying to hide his erection, trying not to glance at her naked body. "Your flight was early this morning. You're probably jet-lagged. But we only have one night. One single night. One night for Olive to suspend the outside world. To avoid thinking about Tom and what had happened earlier today and the mysterious woman Adam was in love with. One night to forget that whatever feelings she had for him, they were not mutual. "Hey." He reached up, pushing her hair behind her shoulder. "You don't owe me anything. Let's get some sleep and we have one night." Determined, she pressed her palm on his chest, straddling him. The cotton of his pants was soft against her folds. "I want the whole night." She smiled down at him, forehead against his, her hair a curtain between them and the outside world. A sanctuary of sorts. He gripped her waist like he couldn't help himself, pulling her against him, and oh, they fit so well together.
"Come on, Adam."
"I know you're old, but you can't go to sleep just yet." He seemed to forget what he was about to say the moment her hand slid inside his pants. His eyes closed, and he exhaled sharply. "And yes." "Good." "Olive." "Yes." She kept on sliding down his body and tugging at his pants, and he made some half-hearted efforts to stop her, but he didn't seem to be fully in control, and in the end he let her take his remaining clothes off. She pulled her hair back and sat on her heels between his thighs. Adam tried to look away and failed. "You are so beautiful." The words were low and hushed, as though they'd slipped out of his mouth. Loose and unbidden, just like everything else about this. "I've never done this," she confessed. She didn't feel shy, probably because this was Adam.
"No."
"Come here." "So, it probably won't be any good."
"You, Olive."
"You don't have to. You shouldn't." "Noted." She pressed a kiss against his hip, and he groaned as though she'd done something special, as though this was beyond anything. "But if you have any wishes." "Olive." "I'm going to grunt." He was going to grunt, a rumbling noise coming from deep in his chest. She ran her nose on the skin of his abdomen, seeing his cock twitch with the corner of her eye. "I love the way you smell." "Olive." Slowly, precisely, she wrapped her hand around the base of his erection and studied it from underneath her eyelashes. The head was shiny already, and she didn't know much, but he seemed close. He seemed very hard, and above her his chest heaved, and his lips parted and his skin flushed. He seemed like it wouldn't take much, which, good. But also, Olive wanted her time with him.
She wanted so much time with Adam.
Someone has done this to you before, right? He nodded, like she'd expected he would. His hand fisted the sheets, trembling slightly. Good. So you can tell me if I mess it up. She said the last word against the shaft, and it felt like they were oscillating, vibrating at some shortwave frequency that burst and shattered when she touched him for real. Before parting her lips on the head of his cock, she looked up at him, gave him a small smile, and that seemed to do him in. His back arched. He groaned, and ordered her in hushed tones to please, give him a moment, go slow, not let him come, and Olive wondered if his spine was melting into the same liquid, scalding pleasure she'd felt earlier. It probably couldn't have been more obvious that she'd never done this, and yet it seemed to turn him on beyond belief. He clearly couldn't help himself. He thrust forward, threaded his fingers in her hair, pressed her head down until her throat was tight around him. He groaned and talked and caught her eyes, as if constantly fascinated by the way she was looking up at him. He slurred raspy words, mumbling, "Olive, yes. Lick take it just deeper. Make me come." She heard praises and endearments come out of his mouth. How good she was, how lovely, how perfect. Obscenities about her lips and body and eyes, and maybe she would have been embarrassed if it hadn't been for the pleasure spilling rich from both of them, overflowing their brains. It felt natural to have Adam ask for what he wanted.
To give it to him.
"Can I?" Her teeth grazed the underside of the head, and he grunted abruptly, "In your mouth." She only had to smile at him, and his pleasure looked nuclear, pounding through him and washing over his entire body. What Olive had felt earlier, white-hot and just shy of painful. She was still sucking gently when he regained control of his limbs and cupped her cheek. "The things I want to do to you. You have no idea." "I think maybe I do." She licked her lips. Some, at least. His eyes were glazed as he stroked the corner of her mouth, and Olive wondered how she could possibly be done with this, with him, in just a few hours. "I doubt it." She leaned forward, hiding a smile into the crease of his thigh. "You can, you know." She nibbled on the hard plane of his abdomen and then looked up at him. "Do them." She was still smiling when he pulled her up to his chest, and for a few minutes they managed to sleep. It really was a nice hotel room, she supposed. The large windows, mostly. And the view of Boston after dark, the traffic and the clouds, and the feeling that something was happening out there, something she didn't need to be part of, because she was here. With Adam. What language is that? It occurred to her to ask. He couldn't quite look at her face, not with her head nestled under his chin, so he continued to draw patterns on her hip with his fingertips. "What?" "The book you're reading, with the tiger on the cover. German. Dutch." She felt his voice vibrate, from his chest and through her flesh. "Is it a manual on taxidermy?" He pinched her hip, lightly, and she giggled. "Was it hard to learn? Dutch, I mean." He inhaled the scent of her hair, thinking for a moment. "I'm not sure. I always knew it." "Was it weird? Growing up with two languages?" "Not really. I mostly thought in Dutch until we moved back here." "How old was that?" 9? It made her smile, the idea of child Adam. "Did you speak Dutch with your parents?"
"No," he paused.
"There were au pairs, mostly. Lots of them." Olive pushed herself up to look at him, resting her chin on her hands and her hands on his chest. She watched him watch her, enjoying the play of the streetlights on his strong face. He was always handsome, but now, in the witching hours, he took her breath away. "Were your parents busy?" He sighed. They were very committed to their jobs, not very good at making time for anything else. She hummed softly, conjuring a mental image, 5-year-old Adam showing a stick figure drawing to tall, distracted parents in dark suits surrounded by secret agents speaking into their headsets. She knew nothing about diplomats. Were you a happy child? It's complicated. It was a bit of a textbook upbringing. Only child of financially rich, but emotionally poor parents. I could do whatever I wanted, but had no one to do it with. It sounded sad. Olive and her mom had always had very little, but she'd never felt alone. Until the cancer. Except Holden? He smiled. Except Holden, but that was later. I think I was already set in my ways by then. I'd learned to entertain myself with things. Hobbies. Activities. School. And when I was supposed to be with people, I was antagonistic and unapproachable. She rolled her eyes and bit softly into his skin, making him chuckle. I've become like my parents, he mused. Exclusively committed to my job. That's not true at all. You're very good at making time for others. For me. She smiled, but he looked away as if embarrassed, and she decided to change the topic. The only thing I can say in Dutch is Ik hou van jou. Her pronunciation must have been poor, because for a long moment Adam couldn't parse it. Then he did, and his eyes widened. My college roommate had a poster with I love you written in every language, Olive explained. Right across from my bed. First thing I'd see every morning after waking up. And at the end of year 4 you knew every language? End of year 1. She joined a sorority as a sophomore, which was for the best. She lowered her gaze, nuzzled her face in his chest, and then looked back up at him. It's pretty stupid if you think about it. Stupid. Who needs to know how to say I love you in every language? People barely need it in one. Sometimes not even in one. She smoothed his hair back with her fingers. Where's the restroom? On the other hand. He leaned into her touch, as if soothed by it. War is de WC? Olive blinked. That would be, where's the restroom? He explained. Yeah, I figured. Just, your voice. She cleared her throat. She'd been better off without knowing how attractive he sounded when speaking another language. Anyway, that would be a useful poster. She brushed her finger against his forehead. What's this from? My face. The little scar. The one above your eyebrow.
Ah.
Just a stupid fight. A fight. She chuckled. Did one of your grads try to kill you? Nah, I was a kid. Though I could see my grads pouring acetonitrile in my coffee. Oh, totally. She nodded in agreement. I have one, too. She pulled her hair behind her shoulder and showed him the small, half-moon-shaped line right next to her temple. I know. You know? About my scar? He nodded. When did you notice? It's really faint. He shrugged and began tracing it with his thumb. What's it from? I don't remember. But my mom said that when I was 4 there was this huge snowstorm in Toronto. Inches upon inches of snow piling up, the most intense in 5 decades. You know the drill. And everyone knew it was coming, and she'd been preparing me for days, telling me that we might end up stuck at home for a few days. I was so excited about it that I ran outside and dove headfirst into the snow, except that. I did it about half an hour after the storm had started and ended up hitting my head on a stone. She laughed softly, and so did Adam. It had been one of her mother's favorite stories. And now Olive was the only person who could tell it. It lived in her and no one else. I miss the snow. California is beautiful, and I hate the cold. But I really miss the snow. He continued stroking her scar, a faint smile on his lips. And then, when the silence had settled around them, he said, Boston will have snow. Next year. Her heart thudded.
Yeah.
Except that she wouldn't be going to Boston, not anymore. She'd have to find another lab. Or not work in a lab at all. Adam's hand traveled up her neck, closing gently around her nape. There are good trails for hiking where Holden and I used to go in grad school. He hesitated before adding, I'd love to take you. She closed her eyes, and for a second, she let herself imagine it. The black of Adam's hair against the white snow and the deep greens of the trees. Her boots sinking into the soft ground. Cold air flowing inside her lungs, and a warm hand wrapping around her own. She could almost see the flakes, fluttering behind her eyelids.
Bliss.
You'll be in California, though, she said distractedly. A pause. Too long. Olive opened her eyes.
Adam.
He rolled his tongue inside his cheek, as if thinking carefully about his words. There's a chance that I'll be moving to Boston. She blinked at him, confused.
Moving?
He'd be moving? What?
No.
What was he saying? Adam was not going to leave Stanford, right? He'd never been. The flight risk had never been real. Right? Except he'd never said that. Olive thought back to their conversations, and he'd complained about the department withholding his research funds, about them suspecting that he was going to leave, about the assumptions people had made because of his collaboration with Tom, but he'd never said that they were wrong. He'd said that the frozen funds had been earmarked for research for the current year. That's why he'd wanted them released as soon as possible. Harvard, she whispered, feeling incredibly stupid. You're moving to Harvard. It's not decided yet. His hand was still wrapped around her neck, thumbs swiping back and forth across the pulse at the base of her throat. I've been asked to interview, but there's no official offer.
When?
When will you interview? She asked, but didn't really need his answer. It was all starting to make sense in her head. Tomorrow. You're not going home. He'd never said he would. He'd only told her he'd be leaving the conference early. Oh God. Stupid, Olive. Stupid. You're going to Harvard. To interview for the rest of the week. It was the only way to avoid making the department even more suspicious, he explained. The conference was a good cover. She nodded. It wasn't good, it was perfect. And God, she felt nauseous. And weak-kneed. Even lying down. They'll offer you the position, she murmured, even though he must already know. He was Adam Carlson after all. And he'd been asked to interview. They were courting him. It's not certain yet.
It was.
Of course it was. Why Harvard? She blurted. Why do you want to leave Stanford? Her voice shook a little, even though she did her best to sound calm. My parents live on the East Coast, and while I have my issues with them, they're going to need me close sooner or later. He paused, but Olive could tell that he wasn't done. She braced herself. The main reason is Tom. And the grant. I want to transition to doing more similar work, but that will only be possible if we show good results. Being in the same department as Tom would make us infinitely more productive. Professionally, moving's a no-brainer. She'd braced herself, but it still felt like a punch in the sternum that left her void of air, caused her stomach to twist and her heart to drop.
Tom.
This was about Tom. Of course, she whispered. It helped her voice sound firmer. It makes sense. And I could help you acclimatize, too, he offered, significantly more bashful. If you want to. To Boston. To Tom's lab. Show you around if you're feeling lonely. Buy you that pumpkin stuff. She couldn't answer that. She could not answer that. So she hung her head for a few moments, ordered herself to buck the hell up, and lifted it again to smile at him. She could do this. She would do this. What time are you leaving tomorrow? He was probably just moving to another hotel closer to the Harvard campus. Early. Okay. She leaned forward and buried her face in his throat. They were not going to sleep, not 1 second. It would be such a waste. You don't have to wake me up when you leave. You're not going to carry my bags downstairs? She laughed into his neck and burrowed deeper into him. She thought this was going to be their perfect night. And their last. Chapter 18. Hypothesis. A heart will break even more easily than the weakest of hydrogen bonds. It wasn't the sun high in the sky that woke her up, nor housekeeping, thanks to Adam, likely, and a do not disturb sign on the door. What got Olive out of bed, even though she really didn't want to face the day, was the frantic buzzing on the nightstand. She buried her face in the pillow, extended her arm to grope her way to her phone, and then brought it to her ear. "Yes," she bleated, only to find that it wasn't a call but a very long string of notifications. It included one email from Dr. Aslan congratulating her on her talk and asking for the recording, 2 texts from Greg. "Have you seen the multi-channel pipette?" NVM found it. One from Malcolm, "Call me when you see this," and 143 from On. What the? She blinked at the screen, unlocked her phone, and started scrolling up. Could it be 143 reminders to wear sunscreen? On, OMG. On, where the hell are you? On, Olive Louise Smith. On, JK, I know you don't have a middle name. On, but if you did it would be Louise, fight me, you know I'm right. On, where are you? On, you're missing so much, you are missing so. On, where the hell is your room, I'm coming to you. On, oh well, we need to talk about this in person. On, are you dead? On, you better be, it's the only way I'll forgive you for missing this OL. On, OL, is this real life, is it just fantasy? On, OL. Olive groaned, rubbed her face, and decided to skip the other 125 messages and text on her room number. She went into the bathroom and reached for her toothbrush, trying not to notice that the spot where Adams had been was now empty. Whatever On was freaking out about, Olive was likely going to be underwhelmed. Jeremy had Irish step-danced at the department social, or Chase had tied a cherry stem with his tongue. Great entertainment value, for sure, but Olive would survive missing either. She dried her face, thinking that she was doing a great job of not thinking of how sore she was, of how her body was buzzing, vibrating like it had no intention of stopping, not 2, not 3, not 5 hours from now, of the faint, comforting scent of Adam on her skin. Yeah, a great job. When she stepped out of the bathroom, someone was about to tear down the door. She opened it to find On and Malcolm, who hugged her and started talking so loudly and rapidly she could barely make out the words, though she did catch the terms paradigm-shifting, life-altering, and watershed moment in history. They chattered their way to Olive's unused bed and sat down. After a few more moments of overlapping babbling, Olive decided to intervene and lifted her hands. Hold on. She was already coming down with a headache. Today was going to be a nightmare for so many reasons. What happened? The weirdest thing, On said. Coolest, Malcolm interrupted. She means coolest. Where were you, OL? You said you were going to join us.
Here.
I just, was tired after my talk and fell asleep and lame. OL, very lame. But I have no time to berate you for your lameness because I need to catch you up with what happened last night. I should tell her. Malcolm gave on a scathing look. Since it's about me. Fair enough, she conceded with a flourishing gesture. Malcolm smiled, pleased, and cleared his throat. OL, who have I been wanting to have sex with for the past several years? She scratched her temple. Off the top of her head, she could name about 30 people. Victoria Beckham?
No.
Well, yes. But no. David Beckham? Also yes. But no. The other Spice Girl? The one in the Adidas tracksuit?
No.
Okay. Yes, but don't focus on celebrities. Focus on real-life people. Holden Rodriguez. On blurted out impatiently. He hooked up with Rodriguez at the department social. OL. It is with utmost regret that I must inform you that you have been dethroned and are no longer the president of the Hot for Teacher Club. Will you retire in shame or accept the treasurer position? Olive blinked. Several times. An inordinate amount of times. And then heard herself say, "Wow. Isn't it the weirdest?" "Coolest on," Malcolm interjected.
Coolest.
Things can be weird in a cool way. Right, but this is pure, 100% cool, 0% weird. Hold up, Olive interrupted. Her headache was growing a size or two. Holden is not even in the department. Why was he at the social? No idea, but you bring up an excellent point, which is that since he's in pharmacology, we can do whatever we want without having to tell anyone. Ann tilted her head. Is that so?
Yep.
We checked Stanford's socialization regulations on our way to CVS to get condoms. Basically foreplay. He closed his eyes in bliss. Will I ever step inside a pharmacy again without getting a boner? Olive cleared her throat. I'm so happy for you.
She really was.
Though this did feel a bit weird. How did it happen? I hit on him. It was glorious. He was shameless, OL. And glorious. I took some pictures. Malcolm gasped in outrage. Okay, that's illegal and I could sue you. But if I look good in them, do send them my way. Will do, babe. Now tell us about the sex. The fact that Malcolm, usually very forward with the details of a sex life, just closed his eyes and smiled, spoke volumes. Ann and Olive exchanged a long, impressed glance. And that's not even the best part.
He wants to see me again. Today. A date.
He used the word date unprompted. He fell back on the mattress.
He's so hot.
And funny. And nice. A sweet, filthy beast. Malcolm looked so happy. Olive couldn't resist. She swallowed the lump that had taken residence in her throat sometime last night and jumped on the bed next to him, hugging him as tight as she could. Ann followed and did the same. I'm so happy for you, Malcolm. Same. Ann's voice was muffled against his hair. I am happy for me, too. I hope he's serious. You know when I said I was training for gold? Well, Holden's platinum. You should ask Carlson, OL, Ann suggested. If he knows what Holden's intentions are. She probably wasn't going to have the opportunity anytime soon. I will. Malcolm shifted a bit and turned to Olive. Did you really fall asleep last night? Or were you and Carlson celebrating in unmentionable ways? Celebrating. I told Holden that I was worried about you, and he said that you guys were probably celebrating. Something about Carlson's funds being released? By the way, you never told me Carlson and Holden were best friends. It seems like a piece of information you'd want to share with your Holden Rodriguez fan club founder and most vocal member roommate. Wait. Olive sat up, wide-eyed. The funds that were released, are they the frozen ones? The ones Stanford was withholding. Maybe? Holden said something about the department chair finally easing up. I tried to pay attention, but talking about Carlson is a bit of a buzzkill, no offense. Plus, I kept getting lost in Holden's eyes. And his butt, Ann added. And his butt. Malcolm sighed happily. Such a nice butt. He has little dimples on his lower back. Oh my God. So does Jeremy. I want to bite them. Aren't they the cutest? Olive stopped listening and stood from the bed, grabbing her phone to read the date. September 29th. It was September 29th. She had known, of course. She had known for over a month that today was coming, but in the past week she'd been too busy fretting about her talk to focus on anything else, and Adam hadn't reminded her. With everything that had happened in the past 24 hours, it was no surprise that he'd forgotten to mention that his funds had been released. But still, the implications of it were. She closed her eyes, shut tight, while Ann and Malcolm's excited chattering kept rising in volume in the background. When she opened them, her phone lit up with a new notification. From Adam. Adam, I have interview meetings until 4:30, but I'm free for the night. Would you like to get dinner? There are several good restaurants near campus, though a shameful lack of conveyor belts. If you're not busy, I could show you around campus, maybe even Tom's lab. Adam. No pressure, of course.